Hi, good evening, guys. Please kindly confirm if you can hear me. Yeah, good evening, guys. Please confirm if you can hear me. Oh, great, great. So we're just gonna wait a little bit for others to, let's say, this is 10 minutes past 6 o'clock. So we just begin in 5 minutes. So we just have extra 5 minutes. All right. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome on this call. We are meant to begin this section by 6 o'clock, and this is 15 minutes past the hour of six Nigerian time. So we just gonna start while others join us. All right. So I love to begin my class by knowing my audience. So I could you please use the chat box? Just tell us what your name is on the chat box. Just write the full name and what you do quickly on the chat box. So if you can hear me, please tell us what the name is. You're not supposed to unmute yourself. Just type on the chat box. All right. So I will want to share my screen. I don't know if you guys can hear me. Please kindly confirm if you can hear me, please. All right. All right. So can you hear can you see my screen? Can I have a thumbs up if you can see my screen? All right, good. All right, so we're gonna be talking about leading people and engaging stakeholders. That is this is the domain we're talking about today is the people domain. And before we proceed, I would love to explain the review of the PMI actually reviewed the domains, um, and it's no longer like for people taking exams. All of us we're gonna take the exams, so it's not like before any longer. So the people domain now has 33% of the PMI exams. So it means most of the questions will come in the people domain, and also the percentage is 33% out of the exams. And one of the tasks that we'll be doing today is the lead project team. We'll be learning how to lead project team, and also how to engage stakeholders. So a leading project team, we know that people make projects. Yeah, so in the process of implementing project, you're going to be working with team members. You're going to be working with an array of stakeholders too. So how do we communicate with team members? What leadership lifestyle fits into our project? And who are the stakeholders who have the capacity to make or mal our project? So how do we engage the stakeholders? What is their interest? And what tool, stakeholders management tool that we're going to be using? So how do we determine stakeholders' influence? So we're going to be talking about all this in this domain. All right. So before I proceed, I just really want to say that my name is Abang Moses, and I'm an organizational development and capacity strengthening manager. I work for Caritas Nigeria, and I also support PMI in facilitating these sections. All right. So what we're going to be covering today is the first thing is why the people domain matters. So we're going to be talking about how the people domain matters in project implementation, and especially why does PMI has to include it as one of the domains, and what is the relevance of managing people in project management. So we are going to be talking about it. So we also talk about lead project team members, how to lead project team member, what leadership lifestyle entails in managing people. So we'll also be exploring different leadership styles. We'll be talking about stakeholders engagement. So, what are the appropriate ways of engaging stakeholders? What are their roles and responsibilities? And what are the tools that can be used while engaging stakeholders? So, we'll wrap up and exams application. So, then we'll do a recap. Then we are good to go. All right, because we've lost some time, we'll just proceed. So while this domain matters, so now the PMI 2006 examination content online rebalances all through exam domains. The people drop from 42 to 33%, but process and business environment also shifted, and people remains the domain most directly tested through realistic team and stakeholder scenarios. Now, we used to have 42%, that is for the people domain. Now, from 42, now it is for 33%. But in the exams context, questions now come around all the questions now are routed through the people's domain. That what that means that as a project manager, you need to have the capacity to communicate effectively. You need to have the capacity to lead team members. You need to have the capacity to engage with stakeholders, because stakeholders can make or mar your project. So if you don't have good stakeholders engagement skills, strategy, it will have great impact on your project. Now, so the people domain is very, very important. So we now have 33%. And if you look at the chart here, you will see how it's been displayed. The process now is 41%, while the business and environment domain dropped to 26%. So this is to tell you the relevance of people in project management, and also the ability of a project manager to implement a project. That is the technical aspect. All right, so this is an overview of the 2006 PMI Echo review. So they reviewed it and also apportioned different percentage. So be rest assured that most of the questions you'll be seeing will also have a contact, and also will be routed from the people, how you interact, and they're going to be testing your knowledge, how you manage stakeholders, how you engage with stakeholders, how you lead your project team member, and also your ability to communicate effectively. So you just need to have an open-minded. What I normally tell people preparing for PMI exams, PMP exams, is that PMP is always problem solving. So you don't take personal decision, like you don't act, you don't escalate. So the ability of you escalating, like in the traditional approach of project management, where project is implemented sequentially, that is the waterfall systems. But in agile methodology, PMI centers moves on agile. So you need to have the capacity, you need to open your mind and put yourself as a project manager that solves problems, not just to escalate. So once you see question like escalate, don't always escalate. Look for a way as a project manager to solve that problem. So that's just what PM is all about. So this is one of the cheat I normally tell my participants, and also people preparing to take PMP exams. So have an open mind, and also put yourself in a scenario that you always solve problems. So every score question on the current PMP exam is drawn from the people domain. So for every question now, they normally routed, I said that earlier. So you have an open minded in leadership style. Now, the human side of delivery. So let's talk about the lead project team member. Setting expectation, empowering people, and building team that performs whatever your leadership style. So now, as a project manager, the first thing you need to do is that you have to set expectations. So in this project, what are the things that we need to expect at the end of the project also? So what do you expect from your team members? That is why when you see in the process domain, we talk about the sprint, the agile methodology. So you see how you look at your product backlog, though you don't pull out activities and start implementing. So now you have to set expectations, what you need to achieve or what the team is set to achieve at the end of a project. And also you need to set out roles and responsibilities, what you expect team members during the process of implementation. So I always advise project managers to use to master the act of using project management tools. So in this scenario, you can just pull out your RACI chart. So your RACI chart manages roles and accountability of team members. So the RACI is an acronym. R means responsible. The person who is responsible for who is in charge of performing a task. Why the A is accountable. That is the person who should ensure that the person responsible that the task is done completely. Why the C is consulted. Consulted is two-way communication um, from people who are to provide what opinion. Why the I is informed. There are people who you should inform why carry out project activities. So you need to set out your expectation and also empower people. People don't just work. So how are we going to achieve this? How are we going to achieve the deliverables set out as a leader? So you need to empower team members with the necessary tools that they will use to achieve project deliverables. Now, are we going to be working with laptops? So, are we going to procure laptops? If we are going to use AI tools, so what are the AI tools that could enable team members perform? Okay, if we're operating like we're implementing um, we are providing a service. So, what does the logistic team need? So, we need to identify those things that the logistic teams need and pull them out and make them available. So, you need to empower your team members, provide necessary provide necessary things that will enable them to implement project activities. Now, you see that as a project manager, your roles and responsibility, one of 75% or 85% of your job is communication. So in agile methodology, the duty of a scrum master is to remove impediment. That is, you have to remove impediment from what the scrum, as in from team members. So anything that will actually hinder project teams from achieving the set result, it is your duty to solve those problems and remove those impediments among team members. That's why you need to remove them and empower them. You also build a team that performs. You don't just bring out people together and you said, okay, so this is our task and this is what we want to achieve. I bring people that are not really knowledgeable about the project. Yes, you can build your team. Yes, you can actually train them. But during the process of hiring, you have to identify the skills that are needed. For example, we're implementing an agricultural livelihood project. You cannot you cannot employ a medical doctor for a place of an irrigation officer. It stresses you. So the person needs to come and you start training. And you know that projects are temporary. So projects are temporary endeavors. So you cannot just come and keep training. At least you should build team that performs. And one of the things when I said build team that perform, you don't have to bring people and come and set them and they are redundant. No. So you should have as a project manager, you should have the knowledge, the capacity to identify what skill is needed in this project and how do I get that skill. Then you communicate to the right, maybe the hiring manager to get that particular skill for you. And even when they come, people will not have all the capacity in the world. So how do we build people capacity? So you need to identify gaps that team members are facing. You need to identify their challenges. That is why it is advisable as a leader at this point, you need to conduct performance appraisal. So the performance appraisal is for you to identify how best your team is performing. Is my team performing right? So which team members is underperforming? So now, if they ask you as a project manager that your team members is not performing as expected, So they will ask you, they will put you some scenario like you should fire him, you should reassign him into another team. Another one said, no, you should coach him and mentor him. So always go with the solution. Always go with the problem, as in the one that is solution oriented. So as a project leader, you don't have to reassign that team member into another project or into another department. You need to communicate with the person, and you can even micromanage, that is coach the person personally. There are some people who perform, or maybe they are not, they find it difficult to blend into that team, and there are some people who learn slowly. So there's individual differences. So you need to call the team members, have a communication with him or her, identify what the problem is, solve the problem. If you are to coach the person personally, you do so, then and actually incorporate the person back to the team when you have actually brought the person up to speed. So this is about the project. This is about leading a project team. So now you need to ask yourself, what leadership lifestyle works for my project? So what leadership styles work for my project? So some people will tell you that they like autocratic leadership because they have to take decision once they give instruction, because projects are temporary. They don't have all the time to allow people to say what they want or to do to play around. So their instructions are always 10 and they want team members to adhere to them. Now, PMI advises project manager, and PMI recommend the servant leadership. So, as a project manager, you are there to remove impediment. You are also a servant while performing your duties. So, you should make yourself available for team members, identify problems, identify issues faced by team members, and look for a way to resolve them. Create an enabling environment for team members to communicate with you. Provide feedback mechanisms where people can actually provide feedback, stakeholders, and also your team members. So the PMI admonishes and recommend the servant leadership staff. Now let's talk about engaging stakeholders. So we will also know how to identify stakeholders in the project. So the relevance of stakeholders can never be overemphasized in project management. So stakeholders can make your project unvalid. So for you to succeed, take for example, you want to implement a water project in a local community, and you didn't consult the gatekeepers, you didn't consult the government, the local government officials. You didn't consult the women leaders. You didn't consult the youth leaders, and you want to start implementation because your organization has got the grant, or you have the grant to implement that project. So you're going to have challenges because the materials used might be stolen in the process. And also, the chief might say that, oh, in our community, you are not allowed to dig holes anyhow. So we might not allow you to do that. But if you pass through, if you identify stakeholders, so the first thing you need to do, once you have an idea on the project that you want to implement, so the first thing you need to do is to identify, brainstorm with your team members, which stakeholders will be supportive and which stakeholders will be blockers. So you identify stakeholders and also identify different strategies on engaging them. So the first activity you need to do when engaging stakeholders is for you to identify them. So stakeholders identification, you do stakeholders mapping. So the stakeholders mapping will enable you to identify the stakeholders. You identify individual stakeholders and stakeholders that will contribute to the success or that will posing potential threat to your project. Now, you also use a tool called the Venn diagram. The Venn diagram is a tool that demonstrates the power and influence of stakeholders. So the size of the circle shows the power and influence of stakeholders, while the closeness shows the relationship that exists between the stakeholders. There are some stakeholders that are related to each other. For example, you now identify how does the women in the community communicate with the chiefs. How the women relate with youth. So you could see that there's a relationship because they live in a particular community, and also most of the women are mothers to those youth. So there's a correlation that exists between the youth and the women. And also, you now start looking for a way, how does government come in? What is the relationship between the local government and the community chiefs? So once you identify all this using the Venn diagram, you now use the stakeholders analysis matrix. The stakeholders analysis matrix is a tool that manages stakeholders' expectations. So now, at this point, you now start analyzing your stakeholders. Now that we have identified the stakeholders, so what is their interest in this project? So you begin to find out the interest of stakeholders. So it is when you know their interest in the project, you now start looking for a way, okay, now how do we engage these stakeholders? So when you identify their interests, you now begin to look for engagement strategy on how to engage them. Now, how do we engage the local government? So what is their interest in this project? If we're implementing a livelihood project, how do we engage the local communities? So what is their interest? So their interest is to see that they benefit from the CVA project, that's the Cash Vouchers Assistance Project. So this will actually improve livelihood of vulnerable communities or low income earners in a particular community. So their interest is to benefit from the services that you are providing, from the cash that you are distributing. So you now start looking for a way on how to engage them. How do we engage them in this project? And also, you communicate with everyone. So you communicate with your stakeholders throughout the project lifecycle. When you're implementing project, it's not advisable that it is when you need your stakeholders, that is where you now start running after them. So it is advisable that you identify your stakeholders as early as possible and you keep them informed throughout the project lifecycle to manage expectations and also improve the likelihood of project success. All right, so lead the project team. So there are 7 enablers that turn a group of individuals into a performing team. So we'll be looking at the 7 enablers that can turn your project team into what, a performing team. And as a project manager, you need to really take these enablers seriously. So when you ask yourself, how do I create a high level performing team? So these are the things that you consider. So the first one is to co-create a team charter covering working hours, communication norms, decision rights, and definition of done. So now, this is the first thing that you need to do as a leader. So when they say co-create, so you have to sit down with either the project steering committee and also with your team members. You sit down and allow them also bring in their own input about the working hours. So they can say, okay, how many hours do you think we could work in a week? How many hours do you think we could work in a day? So you allow them bring in their input so that it don't sound as if you are imposing on them. So you need to give them an opportunity to make decision. Bring out more hours than expected. So, but the fact that the decision was made by them, so it makes it very easy for everybody to adhere. So you provide an opportunity for them to make decision to create the working hours and also communication the norms. So what are the things that we should do and we should not do in our team? For example, now if an email is on your table, you are not expected to ignore the email for 24 hours for emergencies and also for decision making and also decision rights. Now this is where we now set the tolerance level. So tolerance in project management means the uh the minimum amount of authority or right the project manager retain to make decision in the project. So what is a hierarchy? What what should a project officer approve? That is the financial tolerance. So if it is more than 500,000, it has to be a manager. If it is more than 2 million or 5 million, it has to be either the project manager or an advisor. So now you set out those parameters, and also how do you manage risk? What are the thresholds? So you are not if the risk is is above the tolerance level, you have to communicate. So at this point, you set out the decision right, and also you define the things that are to be done and the ones that you are not supposed to do. Now, you also need to clarify performance standard and how success will be measured, both individuals and the whole team. You don't just hire team members, bring them into the team, and you don't and you feel that everything will go as smoothly. So how do you measure project progress? So you need to identify the project progress, the things that are to be done by how team members will be evaluated. So at this point, you use a tool performance the all right. Can you guys hear me? Please confirm if you can hear me. Just yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. So now you have to clarify the performance standard and show success, how success will be measured for both individuals and the team members. So now you need to how do we know that the team is performing as explained, as expected? So what you need to do is before project implementation, you have to define ways of appraising the staff performance. So you need to develop a performance development appraiser tool. This tool will be used to evaluate performance of each project team members. Then you can run the analysis and determine how your team is performing. So how do we do that individually? So you need to pull out each staff job description, what is set for him or her to achieve, their roles and responsibility, and also run it through the performance development appraiser, and you determine whether the staff is underperforming or overperforming. So if the staff is underperforming, you now start looking for ways or either building the staff capacity or coaching the staff or mentoring the staff to make sure that the staff you bring the staff up to speed. So for the purpose of exams, so you are not expected to assign the team member to another project or to fire the team members. No, PMI exams is always trying to make you a problem solver. So you should have an open mind of solving problem. So you could just say you can coach the staff, mentor the staff, and also bring the staff up to speed. Because it's not everybody that can really perform. Some people are slow learners, and if you give them the opportunity, you can coach them privately, and they will actually perform as expected. Now, you also have to revisit expectation at key milestones, not just once at kickoff. So you have to set out milestones and also revisit them regularly. So this is what we said we're going to achieve. So this is what we achieve, and how do we solve? Okay, this is what we set to achieve, and this is where we are. So if you visit your milestones, it will help you track project progress. So this is where the monitoring team comes into play. So you need to know where you are with the project and also check the milestones, what you said you're going to achieve. So what you need to ask yourself is that are we achieving what we said we're going to achieve? If yes, then means the team is on track. If no, then you have to come back, sit down with the team and brainstorm. So what are we not doing right? Why are we not meeting timelines? We are below expectations. So how do we do this right? So you need to look for strategies. That is why, as a team leader, you need to keep revisiting the milestones and also make sure that the milestone has been achieved and keeping every team members intact. So the teams and the context will also involve. So you need to also communicate with team members regularly and bring them up to speed. So the model the behavior you expect. Expectations set by example are far thicker than expectations set by the memo. So you need to also, like I said earlier, provide a platform where everybody portrays and show what they are capable of. And also by this, you give them the opportunity to be their real self. This will enable you to identify staff performance, the behavior, and also to guide you in resolving conflict. Push decision making authority to the level closest to the work whenever appropriate. So when they say push decision making authority to the level closest to the work whenever appropriate, yeah. So you don't just push decision making because or you impose decision. No, most times as a leader, you need to give your team the authority, the benefit of doubt to make key decisions. So now there's a problem in the community, or not just a problem. The teams are we are constrained with time to complete project activities. And now we know that the only way out is to apply crashing, that is adding additional resources or fast tracking. Fast tracking means breaking the sequence and conducting the activities in parallel. So, how do we do this? You don't just tell them that we need to add more hours, so we need to know. You have to give them the ground. You say, okay, fine. We are constrained with 5 days. How do we meet up? So you give them the opportunity to make decision. You'll be surprised that most of the team member will say, okay, sir, why not we actually add more hours? Or instead of we to go back home, uh, if you are working in a different location and you're coming back, you say, okay, why don't we get hotels? Where we're implementing the project to see that we fast track this activity so that we meet up the deadline. So you always push decision making authority to the level closest to the work whenever appropriate. So because they will be the one to do the job. So give them the benefit of doubt. Always co-decide with them. Uh, Give them the opportunity to make input and decisions. Provide the resources, information, and access the team needs to on the authority. As a project manager, I said earlier that your duty as a scrum master is to remove impediment. So your own is to provide an enabling environment, the resources needed by project team members to implement the activities, the information they needed. You are the one to provide necessary information. That is why most of the duty as a scrum master, most of the duty as a project manager is regularly what communicate. So you have to communicate with the project teams, you have to communicate with relevant stakeholders. So your duty is to regularly provide what information and also assess the team need to act on that authority. So what are the team lacking? Do we need to provide them with a more conducive vehicle for logistics? So do they need a better or workspace? Do they need paid AI tools? So what are the things that will enable team members to do their job more efficiently? So these are the things that are very, very important. Tolerate reasonable mistake as part of the learning process rather than re-centralizing control after the first misstep. Tolerate reasonable mistake as part of the learning process rather than what centralizing control after the mistake. No, people are not machines. So people are bound to make mistakes. So once your team member makes mistake, you don't just take away the person's rules or responsibility. No, you can just take that as a learning process. So you can document that on your lesson learned too. Coach the person and also teach the person how that thing is being done rather than bullying the person. Because there are some people, if you take the approach of bullying the person or taking that particular responsibility from that staff, you have shattered the staff ego drastically. So you don't just take away the person's because the person make a mistake. No, you should be there closely to coach and mentor that particular staff and teach the person how that thing is done appropriately. Recognize and reinforce good decision publicly to build the team confidence in its own judgment. Now, don't take decision at the back. always provide an open field for everybody to contribute, and decision is being taken for publicly for everybody, all team members, uh, to gain what confidence and also understand the process. Now, problem solving as a project manager. But before we continue in the problem solving, any question or you could just, if you can hear me, just put up the thumbs up sign to indicate that we should proceed. We just finished about tips on empowering your team members. So now we want to talk about solving problems. So if you can hear me, please, and you want us to continue, just put up, just type on the. All right, all right. Please, I want to see on the chat, said continue. Just type continue on the chat. All right, Catherine. Catherine, your hands are up. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. Catherine, your hands is up. You can ask a question. Oh, I guess it's a mistake. All right. Although we still have a question at the end of it. So if you have any question, please kindly put it on the chat. As in, kindly write it down at the end of the section so you can just ask a question. All right. All right, now let's talk about solving problems. I have been saying that the duty of a project manager or a scrum master is to remove impediment. That means that your job as a leader is to solve problems. So a project leader don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. No man is a monopoly of wisdom. No man is an island. So if you look at the dependency theory for a lot of us study international relations, you could see that nation states have to interact with each other. um, there are a lot of states that have oil, some are good in agriculture, so, some are good in technology. So we coexist. So some people have technical skills in IT. Some people are good in Excel. Some people are good in budget management. So you just have to interact with each other. So as a good leader, you don't have to form that you know everything. It's relatively not. So you have to create the condition for team members to find them together. So what you need to do is that you have to also uh, be there and be open to learning with your team members. Allow them to make decisions. Allow them to make suggestions rather. Then you can collectively make decisions afterward. Now you need to identify the root cause before jumping to a fix. You don't just because as a leader you see that your team is underperforming, and what you do is just to jump into a conclusion. No, you have to identify where the problem is coming from. The root cause analysis, that's the problem tree. So the problem tree is a tool that identify the root cause and also the effect of the problem. So you go below the core problem are what the root cause is. So you use the if cause analysis. You trace, you triangulate, you probe till you get to the root cause of the problem. Then you resolve it. So once a problem is brought to your table, you don't just jump into conclusion. No, you have to ask questions. You have to find out. You have to investigate to get to the root cause, then solve the problem once and for all. Now, symptoms and causes are frequently confused under the time of pressure. Now, you don't just take decision in a hurry as a leader because you see that the decision the problem is bad though. How can I resolve this? Team members are pressed. No, you have to calm down, get to the root cause of the problem, then solve the problem. That is why I always encourage project managers to use tools. You have to be conversant with project management tools. So in this particular scenario, you can use the problem tree. So the problem tree enables you identify the core problem. Below the core problem are the root causes. Then above the core problem are the effects of that problem. So once you do the analysis, you get to the root cause and you also solve the problem. you you bring the right people into the problem solving process, especially those closest to the issue. Now you have to look for people who have a good understanding of the atmosphere of the problem. You bring them together, ask questions, and also brainstorm with them. I employ a strategic way of solving the problem. Now, once you invite people who were there or people who have experience of the issue, it becomes very easy. They will gain trust, thinking that, oh, the decision by one person, but it is a collective decision, and they look into it thoroughly before they come up with a better way of resolving that problem. So as a leader, it is your role, it is your duty to solve problem. Now you have to conflict, because conflict is inevitable. You could see that Samuel Huntington talk about the inevitable nature of conflict. That so long as people live together, there's bound to be conflict. And also, he proved this with his theory when he said that when two metals are put together and emotion is added to it, it brings force is added to it. It brings what sound. That sound, that is two steels when they are placed together and the force is added, it brings sounds. That's how people are. So the fact that you are working with an array of team members, there's going to be problem. There's going to be conflict. So it is your duty as a project manager to identify ways and strategies of resolving what problems. So you also choose problem solving approach that fit the stake and time available. Not every issue needs a full retrospective. So there are some issues that need urgent decision. So it is based on how the problem is. So you identify ways of addressing that problem immediately. So this problem is urgent. I need to resolve it urgent, not for we to set investigation team and the rest. No. So what are the strategies? The ones that are not urgent, you can employ different strategy in resolving them. Document the resolution and the reason behind it, so familiar problems are solved faster next time. So once you solve the problem, you don't just forget it, you document it so that in case the similar issue resurface or reoccur during project implementation, you can just pull up strategy. That is why it is very difficult, it is very easy and it's advisable that you document lesson learned throughout the project lifecycle. So this is where you document your lesson learned. So for every problem, how this problem was solved, you document it. In case it resurface, you just pull out and solve the problem immediately. Represent the voice of the team. As a project manager, you are the leader. So you have to represent and also protect the interests of your team members. So the project leader is a two-way conduit. So carry the team concerns and constraint upward and outward, not just instruction downward. You don't just send instruction to them. No, you have to also carry their consent. Now, the welfare of staff is not longer of your team member because of inflation or maybe currency fluctuation. You are the duty to protect them and also make sure that they get what is due for them. So you communicate with either the funder or either the client, and also you communicate with the people needed. Surface team concerns. You have to present their consent to appropriate authority or to appropriate channels. So, who are the blockers and capacity constraint? You have to identify where your team members are underperforming and recommend appropriate capacity building opportunities for them. Are we going to train them? So, now my SI team, the strategic information team, is underperforming. They don't really have the capacity to use new AI tools or to use SPSS or any other relevant tool out there in data management. So, what do we do to resolve this problem? We need to send them for training for them to build their capacity so that they can actually do the job more efficiently. Sorry. So you also need to sponsor stakeholders honestly and proactively. Advocate for the resources. You have to advocate for resources as a project leader. So every as a project leader, as a project manager, you are all the resources in the project. So you have to advocate for the inflow and outflow of resources and also protect the interests of your team members. Protection from scope creep. Now, what scope creep means? Adding unnecessary activities into the project. So unnecessary activities that don't add value into the project can alter the design of the project, and also it can stretch the triple constraint triangle from either in the schedule or in the scope. So now you have to make sure that you avoid scope creep or necessary addition of project activities. So this can also drain the morale or low the morale of project team members. Working condition and the team need to succeed. So provide all the things necessary that the team need to succeed in the project, because you are their voice, you have the opportunity, you have the capacity to communicate with the leadership and also high level stakeholders. You need to also translate organization or stakeholders pressure in terms of the team. So the most of the things or the pressure that cannot be handled by the team members, you have to bear it upon because you are a leader, and also transfer it. Look for ways of managing that issue and resolving that problem. So you don't need to be exposing your team members to danger every single time. As a leader, you are there to protect, you are there to guide, and also make sure that your team members perform effectively. You have to celebrate team achievement visible to the wider organization. Now, a motivated staff is a productive staff. So you need to look for ways, you need to look for strategies, ways of celebrating your team members. Now, for team members who have done well, you need to look for you need to look for strategies to celebrate them. This will actually boost their morale. That's why if you walk into some organization, if you look right or you look left, you see a photograph, and it will be boldly written staff of the month. So staff of the month, this will actually promote healthy competition. This is, you're telling the staff that you're seen, your effort in this project, your effort is in this organization is seen, and also we want to say thank you for the services that you bring on board. Support the team, varied experiences, skills, and perspective. So, as a high performing team draws strength from difference. So, they've drawn their strength from differences. So, in background, skill level, working style, viewpoint within the difference. So, now you have to look for a way to support your team members. How do you support your team members? One, you have to recognize differences in technical skills. You need to know that, oh, this staff is good at this one is good at this. So how do I support you where you don't have capacity? How do I encourage staff to collaborate with each other, to learn from each other? How do staff leverage on comparative advantage, to reduce comparative advantage and leverage on each other what skills to push the project forward and the interest of the organization? So seniority, culture, and working style as an asset to leverage, not a problem to smooth over. So you look for ways on how to reduce unnecessary competition among team members, and also create an avenue where team members can um, coexist with each other, support each other, and learn from each other. So I might be good in data analysis, you might not be good in data analysis. How do I work with you so that you can also learn and also fast track in your own work? Budget management, you're not good in budget management. How can I learn budget from you? And also, you're good in the use of project management tools, Asana, Trello. So how do I learn from you? So you coexist with each other and also supporting members to learn from each other. Adapt communication and task assignment to how individual team members work best. Now, project management is also adaptive. That's one of the principles of is adaptive. So how do we adapt and also communicate? So you need to actually train your team members to actually adapt and respond to change. you know that agile methodology, we are responding to environment. So that is means that we adapt to change. So we make changes and also modifications as requested by the client and also by the project to enable us to achieve project deliverables. You create space for quieter or less represented voices to contribute, not just the loudest ones. Now, it's not everybody that know how to shout in an organization or in a team. There are some people who are born naturally quiet, or there are some people who don't like how to talk. So you need to create that environment for everybody to have a say in the team member in the team. So it's not as if because this person has the gift or hereditary gift, had gift to talk, and the other person is quiet. So all the time we have to be hearing from the other person. No, the person quiet might have the best idea at the time. So you have to create an avenue where all team members contribute and freely, and also everybody is entitled to their opinion. Address biases or exclusionary dynamics directly and promptly when they surface. Now, you could see that there are some things where people do unhealthy relationships in within the project team, and people start forming cabals, people start forming groups. No, you have to address biases and also any attempt to exclude a particular team members from the team. Remember that project management is participatory. Everybody contributes to achieve a harmonious whole. So the process in which a particular team member is being excluded by a certain team members is unacceptable. Look for a way to address that and reintegrate that team members as fast as possible back into the project team. Now, determine an appropriate leadership style. So, what leadership style really work for me in the project? So, effective leaders flex their style to the team maturity, the task complexity, the situation. There is no single correct style. So, it depends on which style works for you. There's no single correct leadership style. So, some people use directive, high guidance, close supervision, new or inexperienced teams. Now, this directive is recommended for a new team or a team that is not experienced. So you are there to guide them and also to supervise them close and in a close range because they are new to the project and also new either to the organization. So you have to be there to supervise them so that they don't make unnecessary mistakes. Now the second one is coaching, guidance plus explanation. This one is not just to supervise or guide them. Now, at this point, you are guiding them in their duties and also explaining the job to them. So you explain why this and also build capability and buy-in. So you explain why this particular task is done this way and why we should do this particular task. Then supporting, you facilitate and encourage capable teams needing confidence. That people at this point, your team members knows the job, they can do the work, but you need to what encourage them to build their confidence so that they will do the job at 10. Now what this means is that the people know the job but they might not have the necessary confidence in doing that work. So you tell them that, oh, you know these things and we are good with you guys, we trust your decision. So as a team members, you are just there to motivate, you are just there to tell them that you believe in them and also you see what they do. Delegating, hands off control. At this point, you are not in control. You delegate the tasks. Their experience and their sufficient team, they know what to do. So all you need to do is just to assign tasks to them and they will do it. Why? Because you trust them and you know that they will deliver on the job. So these are some of the leadership styles. But PMI recommend what the servant leadership. Establish close roles and responsibility. When we started this training, we talked about the RACI chart. So I said that the RACI chart is a tool that helps manage roles and responsibility of team members. Now we don't have to say that, oh, we're supposed to uh who is in charge of the construction of latrines, who is in charge of distributing the dignity kit, and you begin to find who is in charge. No, As a good project manager, you should have a mastery of project management tools. So you should use the RACI chart. The R means responsible, the person who is in charge of performing the task, while the A is accountable, the person who should ensure that the task is done completely. And the C is consulted, somebody who is to provide what an opinion is a two-way communication. Then inform is a one-way of opinion. Now you're going to perform a task, you're writing an email and you just put the head of organization in copy. You are just keeping him informed, not to act on the email. Now, as a project manager, you need to define your roles and responsibilities. You have to define your roles, responsibility, and decision authority explicitly using the tool that's the RACI chart. You have to ensure roles reflect actual skills and capacity, not just formal job titles. No. You have to assign tasks to people who have the capacity to do the job because you are pursuing projects are temporary, so you are constrained with time, and you're also making sure that you deliver on the client expectations and also the relevant stakeholders. So you make sure that you assign tasks to people who have the capacity to do the job. That is why when you're building your team, you build your team around people who have the capacity and also people who are able to deliver on the job. Even while you onboard them, there's room for regular mentorship and coaching and capacity building to make sure that team members deliver on the job. You communicate role clearly to wider stakeholders. You have to communicate the roles and responsibility to them. They should be aware. Now we use a SharePoint. You use project management tools where every project team member identify and knows what or he or she is supposed to be doing. You revisit and adjust roles as the project moves through phases or as the team composition changes. So the roles, the RACI chart is a living document. When I said living document, I mean a document that can be updated. So it's not just static. So you need to revisit the RACI chart and also the RACI matrix and also reassign tasks. Maybe as the project changes, you might need other people to handle some tasks, or some people might be busy. So you revisit the tasks and also assign them to people who have the right capacity or people who are available to do the tasks. So you have to establish. So this is in one glance, lead the project team member. The first thing you need to do is to establish expectation at the team level. So once you establish expectation, what are we going to achieve as a team? What are we supposed to achieve as a team? Once you establish expectation, the next thing you need to do is to empower the team members, empower them with the necessary knowledge, empower them with the necessary tools and resources needed to implement or project activities, solve problems. When they are implementing, they might have problems in the process of implementing the project. So they might have project problems in the process of implementing project. So you need to look for opportunities and ways of solving team members' problems. So you need to represent the voice of the team. As a good leader, you have the right, you have the as in you are supposed to protect the interests of the team members, to the appropriate stakeholders and leadership. You have to support team members, varied experience, skills, and perspective. So that's why, as a project manager, you have to be an all-rounder. You have to have a mastery of project management. You have to understand the job. For any project team members who is lacking, you have to call the person, provide a sort of coaching, support, and also bring the person up to speed. Determine an appropriate leadership styles that work for you. In this our project, what leadership style will work for me? So you have to determine the leadership styles that work for you and also choose it. You have to establish clear rules and responsibility for team members. So this is also very, very important. So in summary, this is the leading and also project team members, project team, having a functional team. So as a project manager, you have to take these 7 key things into consideration. So, in recap, you have to establish expectation at the team level. You have to empower the team. You have to solve problems. You have to represent them, the voice as because you are the voice. You have to support them, build their skills, You have to determine appropriate leadership styles that will work in your project and also establish clear rules and responsibilities. All right. If you can hear me, please can I see a thumbs up? Can I see a thumbs up if you can hear me? All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. So let's quickly proceed. We lost some time. So now let's talk about engage stakeholders. That's stakeholders engagement. So we have 6 enablers that turn stakeholders into allies of project success. So stakeholders can make or mar your project. So let's look at the things that we need to consider when we are talk about stakeholders engagement. So the first one is stakeholders identification is ongoing, not a time exercise at a project. These stakeholders emerge as the project evolves. I said earlier that you are advised to identify your stakeholders as early as possible. So once you identify your stakeholders as early as possible, it is also once you identify your stakeholders as early as possible, you also need to keep engaging this because you have identified your stakeholders. So there's no need for you to identify your stakeholders any longer. No, while you're implementing, you might see new stakeholders in the process. So it is very, very important for you to keep identifying stakeholders during project implementation. So we have different type of stakeholders. We have the sponsor and the steering committee. We have the vendors and the suppliers. That is people that will be providing services in the project. The project team members are also stakeholders. We have the regulatory and compliance bodies, people will make sure that we will adhere to government regulations. We have the customers and the end users. We have the impacted business unit. We have the impacted business unit. So now, to be clear, stakeholders can be users. Stakeholders can be influencers. Stakeholders can be sustainers, and also stakeholders can also the providers. So the vendors are providers, the project teams are providers, the regulatory and compliance bodies are influencers. Then the sponsor and steering committee are also the governance, people who oversee the project success, the steering committee. Now, analyze your stakeholders. The first thing you need to do is to identify your stakeholders, like I've explained that before. So you use the stakeholders mapping, you map out your stakeholders, you brainstorm with your team members to map out stakeholders that are relevant to that project team, to that project, and also identify appropriate response strategy on how to engage them. So you use the stakeholders the Venn diagram. The Venn diagram, like I said earlier, is a tool that identifies the power and influence of stakeholders. The size of the circle shows the power and influence, while the closeness shows the relationship that exists between stakeholders. So that's what you use to determine the power and influence of stakeholders. Now, after you determine the power and influence, you use the matrix, stakeholders matrix to manage stakeholders' expectations. But now let's talk about stakeholders analysis. Now, the power interest grid remains the fastest way to translate a stakeholder list into engagement strategy. So now that we have identified the stakeholders, how do we now engage them? So we assess each stakeholder's level of power influence and the interest level of the concern in the project. So what is the stakeholders level of what is their influence? It's not every stakeholders that have equal power. You cannot measure, let's say, the traditional rulers and the government. Yeah, everybody will play a role in the project, but they don't have similar power. So you analyze them and also identify ways of engaging them. So use the analysis to prioritize where engagement time and effort should go. So it is when you identify which stakeholders will will be blockers and which stakeholders will support the project. So you now identify ways on engaging them and also trying to get their buy-in during project implementation. Reassess periodically. Power and interest shift as the project moves through its cycle. Yes, the government might be powerful today. As the project shifts while it is implementing with the local communities, the power might shift from government to the local communities. So you need to regularly reassess your stakeholders periodically and also update your engagement strategy so that you will not have issues during implementation. So you need to ask yourself the power and interest to keep satisfied. That is a high power, low interest. Manage closely, high power, high interest. Monitor, low power, low interest. Keep informed, low power, high interest. So you prioritize each stakeholders based on the power and also based on the interest in the project. Analyze and tailor communication to stakeholders' needs. So you need to analyze and tailor what communication to the need of the stakeholder because these are the people that we are working with. These are the people that you're working with as stakeholders. One communication style really fits every stakeholders. No. So for every stakeholders is unique. So you cannot say that because this particular approach work for this stakeholder, so we are going to use the same approach for every other stakeholders. No. You need to develop different stakeholder strategy for each particular what stakeholder. What does it work? What does it work for Mr. A? What does it work for Mr. B? What work for Mr. A might not work for Mr. B. Jesus. Now, what you need to do is also match communication method, in-person written report, dashboard, quick messages to stakeholders and preference urgency. No, you cannot be writing letters to community leader or women who are not educated. Because you write letter to local government chairman does not mean that you should write the same letter to the local community. You have to go there in person and see them. Sit down there, have a communication, and also explain, communicate with them effectively. Adjust the level of technical detail to what each stakeholder actually need to make decision. So you have to adjust it to their level. The way you communicate with the Ministry for Health, the way you communicate with Ministry for Environment differ from the way you communicate with market women, differ from the way you communicate with farmers. So each stakeholder has his own strategy. Choose a cadence that matches each stakeholder's level of interest. Avoid over or under communicating. So don't under communicate. Communicate with stakeholders regularly, but don't do that too much. Confirm understanding, not just delivery. Sent is not the same as receive and understood. So, for example, now when you're working with government, there are some parastatal you could just send an email. It will take time for the minister to respond to them. So you need to do a follow-up, either go to in person, fix a meeting with the PA, confirm if the letter has passed through and the honorable minister has it already on his desk. Don't assume that he has already seen it. Execute the stakeholders engagement plan. A stakeholder engagement plan can create value once it's actively executed, monitored, and adjusted. So you need to confirm the plan, validate engagement strategy, and channels are current. So you need to ask yourself that this engagement strategy is it still valid? If yes, let's proceed. If it's not valid, so what strategies do we need to imbibe to make sure that we engage the stakeholders effectively so that they don't serve as blockers or they don't cause harm in our project? So you address that problem. So you also need to engage consistently. You have to engage stakeholders consistently. That's why I said throughout the project life cycle. Please don't forget. You engage your stakeholders throughout the project life cycle to deliver plan touch point on schedule. So you don't just involve the government and you go away. It is where you now have problem and you're running back to them. No, you have to keep them informed. You have to keep the local community informed. Everybody that will support or block the project, please keep them informed so that it will increase the likelihood of project success. Monitor effectiveness, track sentiment, participation, and feedback. You have to monitor effectiveness of your strategy, of your plan. If it's not working effectively, you have to make adjustment. If it is, then you have to document lesson learned. Adjust as needed. Update the plan as stakeholder or context shift. So stakeholders plan or engagement strategy is a living document. You don't leave it static. You need to adjust it because stakeholders' relevance might change over time, and also ways of engagement and strategy should also change. So you should also develop strategies on how to accommodate those changes. Optimize alignment among stakeholders, need expectation and project objectives. Stakeholders don't always want the same thing. Skill engagement finds the workable overlap between competing needs and the project actual objectives. So surface conflict stakeholder expectation early rather than letting them collide later in the project. So you have to clarify rules and expectation among stakeholders and also manage them as early as possible so that you don't allow them collide. Because if you allow them clash, it will actually cause a very big breakdown in your project. Facilitate negotiation and trade of discussion grounded in the project, define objective and constraint. So you have to facilitate the negotiation. As a project manager, you have to be a very good negotiator. You have to have negotiating skills and also prevent stakeholders from colliding and also gaining your trust, gaining their trust, and also you achieving your project objectives. Document agreed resolution to alignment doesn't quietly erode over time. You have to document any particular decision taken with them. This is not to hold them accountable, but this is to prevent uh, future problems so that you confirm that you and them are on the same page. Escalate unresolved misalignment to the sponsor or governance body when it exceeds the project leader authority. Like I said, that's tolerance. I said the minimum amount of authority or autonomy a project manager retain in a project. So it's simply put is hierarchy. So one is above your threshold. So you should actually communicate to appropriate tolerance level. But for the purpose of exams, always look for a way to resolve it. Don't escalate. So as a project manager, you should have the capacity to resolve issues, not to be escalating. So please take note. Follow up through a common commitment consistently. Credible compounds over the life of the project. You have to do a follow up with stakeholders regularly. Be transparent about risks, bad news, and constraint. Always let everybody, team members, knows the news and the project, and also you should be transparent about it. So use evidence, data, and stakeholders' own priorities to build persuasive, not cohesive case. Always discuss and negotiate with stakeholders with data and evidence skillfully, persuasively, not with force. Please don't use force because if you use force, it might not fly for you. As a project manager, you have to be a very good negotiator. Invest in relationship before you need them. So before you start bringing them on board, that is why we do a project launch. So you have to invest in them by paying them attention, giving them that respect, acknowledging them in your project, so that when you go to meet them, it becomes very easy for you to communicate. All right. Any question? Any question so far? So if there's a question, please put up your hand. You could just raise up your hand, then you have the floor. But before you start putting up your hand, please kindly confirm if you can hear me with a thumbs up. All right. Emmanuel George, please, you have the floor. Emmanuel George, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Emmanuel, George, we're waiting for you. Please unmute yourself and ask a question, please. All right. So you assume that is a mistake. So any other person? All right. Now, putting it together, people domain scenario questions almost never ask you to define a term. Please take note. I will take this again. For the all of us preparing to take exams, people domain scenario questions almost never ask you to define a term. They ask what you should do next, and the answer usually reward the leader who set clear expectations, empowers rather than controls. This is a cheat. Please take note. And the answer usually reward the leader who sets clear expectations, empowers rather than control, and engages stakeholders as partners rather than obstacles. So you should have an open mind. If you have been a leader who like to control, that's why when you write PMP, you have issues. Always have a mindset of solving problems, a mindset of empowering team, a mindset of engaging team members is very, very important. So that is what people control does. Read every scenario for the underlying people domain principle, not just the surface event. Read every scenario for the underlying people domain scenario, not just for the surface of event. When two answers look correct, pick the one that build long-term trust or team capability. When two answers look correct, pick the one that build long-term trust or team capability. Revisit this deck to recap slides the week before your exams. Enabler 13 enabler 1 pass. Please revisit this deck to recap slide the week before your exam, especially the 13 enablers. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to be, I don't share my slide, but I'm going to be sharing this one with you guys. I will share the slide with you guys. And the answers of any other question. How is this presentation based on the new Echo? All right, so you actually come late. You came late, Emmanuel. I guess so. I can see. Okay. All right. So we've answered that before. The new Echo now, it focuses on it focuses on I'm looking for a way to. So this is how the PMI examination, the new Echo now, from 41, it has reduced to 30. They structure it in 33%. So the PMI 2026 examination content online rebalances all three examination domains. People drop from 42, that's the people domain, drop from 42% to 33%. But process and business environment also shifted, and people remains the domain most directly tested through realistic team and stakeholder scenarios. So that is the shift. And if you look at this chart here, you see that the process has 41%, while the people has 33%, and the business and environment has 26%. For every scored question on the current PMP exam is drawn from the people domain. For every scored one, everyone. So for every domain, even the people and the environment, they should, even the process and the environment, there's in this new Echo, they still bring it, they still test your ability to lead, your ability to engage stakeholders during project implementation. So what they're trying to tell you in this new Echo is that your ability to manage people will be tested throughout the exams. But the question comes directly 33% from the people domain. But it come across all the questions too, all the domains. Emmanuel, George. So this is what it means by the new Echo. All right. I just really want to say thank you everybody for this call, and we will have you will have this slide shared with you by you will have this slide shared with you by Mr. Samuel. He will have to share this slide to you guys. So you drop your email with him, and he's going to share, and he's going to, the recordings also will be shared by the PMI team. The recordings will be shared too. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining this call. Have an open mind, like I told you guys, that in PMP exams, always put yourself in the area and avenue to solve problems. No, so once you see control, please don't go there. So they want to test your ability to solve problems. They want to test your ability to manage conflict, your ability to engage stakeholders. Um, so you should always have, and also don't escalate. If you see any problem, don't always escalate. Look for a way to resolve that problem. That is the right thing to do. That is the right thing to do. That's my name. My name is Abang Moses, and this is my Abang Sen 0101 at Gmail. This is my email address. You can reach out to me on my email, or you can follow me on LinkedIn at Abang Moses, on Instagram moses.abang. So I'm a capacity building and organizational development specialist, key interest in project, program, and partnership management. And I also facilitate project management trainings. I also facilitate project management for development professionals training, so we can hook up and make this place a better place. I just really want to say thank you for your time and also your quest leading teams and making Africa a better place. All right, see you guys, and you have a lovely evening.